So I'm joined again by Stuart, the founder of Comnoco, and he's going to guide us through a demo of an issue that I've seen a lot of bubble app builders struggle with, which is how to generate a high quality PDF from data in your bubble app. So Stuart, over to you. You're going to guide us through this demo and just how simple and easy it can be.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. So yeah, here we are. This is Comnoco. So Comnoco is it's a no-code visual programming language. You can use it to build backends. You can use it to build your own APIs. You can use it to handle webhooks. You can use it to run scheduled tasks. And it's got its own way of building in a very no-code way. So the first thing we do is go to the app. And once you're here, you can sign up or log in. So I will log in. And once we're in, you will go to your team. You'll only have one. Mine's very busy. And then you can create a new workspace for your project. So here's one I created earlier for us. So I'm going to go into the workspace. So the aim of what we're going to do now is we're going to essentially pretend that we're taking maybe some JSON data that another system, Bubble perhaps, has provided, and we're going to generate a PDF and we're going to send it back. So in Comnoco, there's a few things just to know about it. The first is that everything you build as a function. So you can build loads of functions individually and you can use them how you want. So you can build your own reusable blocks of functionality, hence functions. And those functions you can put inside a file just to keep them organized. So you could have a file for all of your Stripe connectivity. You could have a file for all of your PDF generation, whatever you wanted. So that's just to keep organized. And then once you've created a function, you need to expose it to the outside world or you need to run it on a schedule. So once you've created a function, you need to just create a trigger, which is what either turns it into an API or a scheduled task or a webhook receiver, whatever it might be. So let's dive in. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to create a PDF, and then we'll expose that via an API. So we're going to keep this quite simple. We've got some JSON that the other system's giving us, and to create a PDF, what you do in Comico is you actually create it from a Word document or a LibreOffice document. And the idea is that just keeps it really simple. That's kind of what your customers will give you. They'll say, can you make this into a PDF? And you go, sure, give us a Word document of it. It saves you having to build it all. It's a sort of little shortcut cheat. And it fulfills, almost all of business requirements, really. So in here, you can go and you can create a document template. And once you do that, we can call it demo invoice, create the document. And this brings us to a Comnoco file, the Logix tree. Now I'm just going to zoom in a bit for you. And in Comnoco, basically, we guide you through what you can and can't do at any stage. So we're in a document file. So when you click here, you get shown the different ways of creating a document. At the moment, there's only docx to PDF. We've got plans on the roadmap for HTML to PDF as well. So you click that on there, and then you get given the sort of skeleton tree of what you need to do. So Comnoco builds in a tree view, which is just a sequence of instructions: do this, do this, do this, do this, etc. And by having it expandable as a tree, you can really peel back the layers and add loads of functionality to every point in Comnoco. Everything is programmable, but we probably won't see that today. We're going to keep it quite simple. But you can think of this as an alternative to the sort of flow charting stuff you see in other no-code tools. So to create our document, the first thing we want to do is upload a template file. So we're going to create an invoice, and I did create one earlier. So here it is. There's a preview of it. So here's our Word document. So if you upload that, that is now ready. And then the next thing I need to do is say, when we create this file, we're going to receive some data. Now we're just going to receive some JSON. So you could define everything manually, but I'm just going to defined JSON, which is a data structure. So we can call this invoice data, for example. And that's there. And now just to give it some sample data, you can load data from JSON or XML. So I should have some on my clipboard. There I do. So if you upload that, you'll see Comnoco takes that data in and it converts it into typed blocks. So what that means is that Comnoco knows what's a date, what's text, what's number, and it will only allow you to do number things on numbers and text things on text. So it's just sort of helps you. But here's our data. So if you look at this data, you can see it's an order, and inside the order, you've got information about the customer, you've got the order date, and then you've got the order items, of which there are 4 items. So the next thing you need to do is basically manipulate your data. So you might want to do things. And in fact, we probably want to add a total because that is missing a total, and we're going to calculate it a little later and pass it in. So I'm going to add another input here and just call this total. And now I'm going to build my data. So I want the data that I passed to my template, which, by the way, apologies, looks like this. So as you can see, I've set it up to take the order date, which is the order date, and the order ID, etc.
You've done nothing special with that. This is just a Word document that you've put some curly brackets around the fields you want to insert data into.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's certain syntax. For example, when you're in a table, you can look through rows by wrapping them in the in this. So this will do multiple items for those items, and you can do conditional sections. You can do images if you want. You can do links, that sort of thing. But we're just keeping it simple today. So that's what it looks like. Now, in the data that we have, correct. In the data that we have here, it's missing the total. So what we're going to do is add that total to that data, which can then be passed into here. So this total here is 0. I can give it some test date. Let's just give it a number there. So first of all, we're going to take the raw data that's coming in, which is this invoice data. So as you see, I'm rushing ahead here, every time you click on an item or replace an item in Comico, you can add some functionality in it. So we could get data from DynamoDB query or something, but we're just going to take it from the input parameter that we added called invoice data. And we're just going to add that to our template data, which is this here. So that is what gets fed into our template. So if we run this, that's going to make that input data filled with the data that we were passing in. So that's now ready to run to the template. And in fact, we could now run this template, run the whole thing, and we should see, whoops, let me go back here and run it. You will see the PDF that's generated. And as you can see, it's filled it in as we want, just from those curly brackets. And it's done the repeating items here. But this total is undefined. And that's no surprise because we didn't pass that into this template data. So we just need to make sure that gets...
And it's filled it in because the parameter, the key names that you put in the JSON are identical to what you had in the curly brackets in the document.
Correct. Yeah. That's right. So you just need to glue that bit together in, Microsoft Word. So all I need to do here is add an item to an object, and the object I want to add it to, if I click here, is let's just run this. The object I want to add it to is the order. I want to add it called total. And the item I want to add is this number coming in. But instead of just adding the number, I'm going to format it. So if I do format number as text, that now is asking what number do you want to format. So we'll just click that. And I want to choose from my input parameters this total. So as you see, those are linked. Now on my formatting, I can go over here and I can say, make it a currency and give it the British pound symbol and give it 2 decimal places. So if I've got that right and we run that again, you should see this change and be filled in with a total, a fictional total, obviously, that I just put there as sample data.
Something that you pointed out to me on a call a few weeks ago is that like any field, you can make it dynamic. So it would be really easy to run a invoicing system where you could swap out the currency. That's right, isn't it?
That's absolutely correct. So if I go back to this formatting here, so any field can be dynamic and programmed. So at the moment, we've just chosen it as a property. But if I were to click that button there, it puts it on the tree, as we call it. And again, this is why we have the tree. And then I could replace that and I could wrap some logic around it, based on this, make it that currency or something. Or I could map it to the incoming data. So basically anything can become dynamic in that sense. So yes, absolutely. But in the spirits of keeping it simple, we'll put that back today. So this is it really. We've created our PDF. Now let's glue it together and create an API to call this. So let's just save that. And now we can go back to our dashboard. So basically, if you look at these files, what we've created is we created a template, but there's no logic exposing that to anything. There's no logic handling that as an API. So let's go and do that. So if we create a new collection for this, and we'll just call it demos. This is going to look similar, but it's no longer a template. It's for adding functions. So here we have an empty file in which we can put one to many functions to do things. And again, you start by doing this. So when you click here, because we're at the top level.
So a collection is to allow you to group the different parts of what you're trying to make together into kind of one start to finish operation.
No, it's not necessarily start to finish. It's just literally for your organization. So you might have a collection that is all of my date formatting, all of another collection, all of my number formatting, another collection handling all of my webhooks from HubSpot, whatever it might be.
Okay.
But the collections can talk to each other. So it is literally just a way of organizing them so you know where to find them. Keeping organized yourself. You could do everything within one collection if you want. You could create 1,000 functions and tie them all together. It's entirely up to you. But we recommend obviously separating them out so they're easier to find, easier to maintain, and so that if you make a change to one collection, you haven't touched all of your other no-code functions elsewhere. So yeah. So here we've clicked on the top level. I'll just remind you, click here, and it says, okay, what kind of function do you want to add? And so it's in Comico, it's quite cool. You've got different functions. So if you add an API function, basically you're creating it, and the only way it can ever be called is via an API trigger. Likewise, if you create a webhook receiver, the only way it can ever be called is via a webhook. And the difference between these two is in how you define things. For an API function, you'd be able to say, I want to take this in, I want to take this in, I want to take this in, and I'm going to give this, this, and this back. You get to define it. You control it. Whereas if it's a webhook, it's another system like HubSpot, whatever it might be, and they just dump data at you. So you don't define anything. You just get given a big chunk of incoming data. So that's the difference between them. It just helps you build them. A schedule function obviously is one that's just going to run on whatever schedule you define. And a component function is something where you can build your own functionality in Comico that you can reuse a million times. So maybe you're constantly searching Google Drive for documents that match a certain name. You could create that as a component function and then use it in 10 API functions if you want. So we are just going to create an API function today so that we can call it from something else. So let's create API function, and we'll call this gen pdf. Okay, and again, this gives us our skeleton. So being an API function, it's got a few things. It says, what do you want to define as inputs to the API? And what are you going to give back as outputs? So we can set those up in a second. If you're doing any internal stuff, you can add internal parameters or variables there that you can read and write from. And then you define your logic. So take this in, work with these, do this, return that, basically. So we are going to do roughly the same. So our input is just going to take order data, I think we're going to call it. So let's just call this order data. So that's our input. And that order data we want to send in, as the body of our API. Okay, so that's done. And let's load some sample data for that as well, so we can play with it. So the same sample data I had. Just make sure it's on my clipboard. There we go. Right, so we've got our sample data in. I should probably show you another way to get sample data, so we'll do that in a second. So we're going to do that. Now we're also going to calculate the missing total in the order in this. So this function is going to calculate the missing total and then pass it to the template. So to do that, we just need somewhere to put it, which will be a number, and we'll call this calculated total. Okay, so that's where we're going to put it. So what we want to do is look at that order and loop through each of the items, multiplying the quantity by the price and adding it to the total, if that makes sense. So let's do that now. So we need a loop, and Comico makes loops really easy. So now you see is when I click add here, and I'm in the main business logic slot, there's loads you can do. And that's because we've opened up Comnoco. We're not defining inputs or outputs. We're defining the functionality. So for this, we want a loop. And there it is. And when I click loop, it puts the loop on the tree. And it's got two slots. One is, what data do you want to loop through? And the other is, what are you going to do for each item of that data that you're looping through? So the data we want to loop through, I click here. And I'm going to select it from my incoming order data. And it's these items. It's each of these items here. So as you can see, it's only allowing me to select the things that are compatible, which is you can loop through an object or you can loop through arrays. So I'm going to loop through those items. So that's it. And now I'm looping through that. I can say, actually, when I'm developing, I want to see what it looks like when I'm using item number 2 from the loop. So if I do that, it's going to give me the data from the second item in that loop that I can test and work with. And now what we want to do to calculate the total is we want to set that number. So if I type set number, that allows me to update this number. So on the 2, we're going to take a number from here and put it here. So that where we're aiming for is our internal items, and it's the calculated total. And on the from, we want to do a little bit of maths, a really simple bit of maths. So I'm going to click there. And you see I'm on a number slot, so it's showing me all the things I can do with a number. So I want to add them together. And the things I want to add are the starting value of that, which comes from my internal variables. There we go. And then I want to add to that the quantity multiplied by the price. So I'm going to have a multiply, and I'm going to put the quantity from my current item in the loop and the price from the current item in the loop, and that's done. And I can test that in isolation. So this, for example, is 2 times 34.99. So if I run that, you'll see you get the result there. And then if you run adding that to 0, you'll see you get the same value. So if we run this now, it's going to update that value. So if I just do running the set number slot in isolation, you can see I get that value. Now, if we want to run the whole loop, I can do that, and it will give me a total, and you see it's added them all together. So that's how easy loops are in Comnoco, and how you can sort of add value from them. So that's great. So we've got our incoming order data, we've got our total. So let's now generate our PDF. So to generate our PDF, we want to return that actually to the calling API. That's the result. So in the outputs, I'm going to put here a text block where the PDF is going to go. So I'll just call this PDF. Okay. And now in my logic, I can target that. So I'm going to do a set text. Again, on the to of the text is going to be my output parameters, which is PDF. You see they're linked together. And then on the from, I can go and I can call my template function that I created called demo invoice. And you see that's on there, and it says I want the invoice data and I want the total, because that's what we'd defined in here as invoice data and total. So simply map the invoice data to that incoming order data and map the total to the one we've calculated, which is our internal calculated total. And that now gives us the feeding into the generating the invoice. So we can now run this in isolation, and you'll see what it returns is a base 64 encoded string of our PDF, basically.
And
so
that's why
ready.
you.
Well, that's going to be
why
added.
You set the PD. Sorry to interrupt you. That's why you set the PDF to text, because you're getting back a base 64 version of the PDF.
Exactly. So anything binary we turn into base 64 encoded in Comnoco, and you work with it that way. So exactly that. So now that's going to return the PDF. Now the only final thing we need to do here is tell it the MIME type. So this API, what's it sending back? And it's not sending back the default, which is application JSON. We want to return was it application PDF? So to do that, we just need another set text. So let's do that. So this loop here, I'm actually going to add a label to. I'm going to call this loop lines and calculate total. This makes it a bit easier to follow. Same with this set text. This is generate PDF. And you can, by the way, add comments. So I could put anything in here. Oops. Keyboard shortcuts. That went all wrong. There we go. Serves me right. Typing madly. There we go. So I've added a comment, and as you see it shows on the tree. So you can sort of add comments as what you're doing, and so you can understand your own process when you come back to it, because I know we all suffer from that. What did I do? Especially when you come back to it a month later. So that's generating PDF. So let's now add another set text just to set this output type. So this will be output type. And again, we want to set that to this response content type. So there we go. We're setting it to there. And on the from, we just want application PDF. And that means that the browser or whatever's receiving it will know what to do with it. So there we go. And if I run that, you'll see it sets it to application PDF there now. So that is job done. We've written our template. We've attached it to a function that also calculates the total. Now all we need to do is create a trigger to turn that into an API. So if I just save that there. So to create a trigger, you can do it in two ways. You can go to the dashboard and create a new trigger, but there's a shortcut button here, which will give it the same name. So create trigger. And then once you get that, in a trigger, you get the option of what type. So it could be a scheduled task where you run it on a schedule that you can define or choose from there. It could be a webhook, or in our case, we're going with API. We want it to be an API. So basically, because we're sending data in the body, it needs to be a post. So what we want to say is when a post request comes into this trigger, connect it to the function we created. So it's pretty easy. We've only got one in here, but there's my function collection and there's the function we created. So now when a post request comes in, it's connected to that. And now we just need to add some security. So you always define the security in a Comnoco endpoint. Here I'm going to say, I'm going to keep it simple. We're going to have no auth, but I could put advanced auth on, and then I could, oops, I'm going to click it. You could make sure that someone's logged in using tokens or Superbase auth or filter by IP address, whatever it might be. Let's delete that because we're not going to do that. In our case, or you could set it up with an API key.
Could we do API key? That's a kind of basic level of security that I think Bubble users will be familiar with.
Yeah, let's go for that then. Cool. So if you add an API key, you basically need to choose one that you've set up. So in demos, let me have a look. Service user has no API keys, so you just need to set them up. So this is probably easier showing if we go back to the dashboard. Within our team, you can go here and you've got service users. So these are all the service users we have. So we could create a new service user at this point. And we'll call this Planet No Code. And you can say that service user has access to run stuff in our Planet No Code workspace. And you just need to give it a comment. So we've now created that service user. And now within that service user, we can add API keys. So you could create different API keys for your different customers, for example. So here we'll create an API key called key 1, I guess. Just give it a description. Create that API key, and that gives us this API key, which you'll only see once. So copy it and keep it here, because if you need it again, you'll have to regenerate it. So I'll just copy that to my clipboard and actually put it somewhere here so I don't forget it. Okay, I've got that. Cool. So now we've got that API key, which is tied to this service user who's allowed to run that workspace. So that is what you get to choose when you're in the trigger. So if we probably need to refresh this, I don't know whether it'll show it. Yeah, let's just save changes. You just need to reopen it to refresh it to see the new ones. Right, so if I go here and open that trigger again, go to API key, now you see Planet No Code, and you can say that all of the keys for Planet No Code or just that key have permission to run this. So that's what we've done. Selected that together. And then the final thing is just, if you don't want it paused when you publish it, just press active on publish, and that's done. So now we can just publish this, and that will tie together our template at the back with our logic function in the middle and our trigger on the front. It's going to make this available. So let's go and publish this. Save the changes. And this will now give us our API exposed. And once it's finished publishing, we can have a look at that. So remember, we're in our Planet No Code workspace. So we can see all the triggers and everything that's running if we go to the status for that workspace. So if you go here, you can see we've got one trigger running called demos. It's got a post method, which we knew, and it's running. And you can click on this button and you see what Comnoco has done is it's generated the Swagger or Open API specification that explains what we expect. So as you can see, it expects order data and it's going to return PDF, basically. So we can then try that out from here. What we'll have to do first of all is put our API key in, because we set that up. Okay, so that's now got our API. We can press try it out and we can put our data in. So let me just copy that. So order data goes here. There we go. And if we've got that right, we should be able to run it. And the response we get back is, sorry, that's the request. The response is this PDF. So that's done what we want. Doesn't look particularly pretty, so let's actually do that instead from a tool like Postman or something else. So once you've tested it, it actually gives you the curl command. So I can actually copy that there. And now we can go to something to test it. So I use something called Bruno. Let's just get that. So here is Bruno. Bruno is just like Postman, but slightly different. And I won't go into that, but I do recommend it. It's a good one. So we can import from curl, and we can give this the curl command from Comnoco. If we press create, our name is required. So planet no code 2, I think. Create. So here we have this. It should have, here's the order body that we pasted in. We could change this name. Let's just change it to Stuart. There we go. And if we press go, Comico should return our generated invoice with my name, as we put in there. So basically you can call that from any other application, and we've written an end-to-end API function, backend function in Comnoco. So there you go. Any questions?
No, thank you. Thanks for going into all that detail. We'll wrap up this video here. Just a reminder, we'll put links down in the description, but it's comnoco.com to get started. And it's a fantastic tool because you can do things like calculate the total, what we've just worked with there, that's what you could put into the Bubble API connector, and so you can send data through from your Bubble app, and you saw it was really quick. It's really easy to insert dynamic data. So thanks very much, Stuart, and we'll leave the links down in the description for people to get started and follow along.